Hi, I'm Madison Mary and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, please don't hesitate to click that subscribe button down below. And without further ado, let's get into my February wrap-up. So in the month of February, I did pretty well considering I read a lot of hefty books. So I read 9 books in the month of February. I read 2 historical romances, 1 contemporary romance, 1 urban fantasy, and 5 high fantasy. The age ranges for those books were 3 YA, 3 new adult, and 3 adult. And my page count for the month of February is 3,951 pages. A little bit of a step down from last month, but I read 14 books last month, so of course I had more pages, so. As per normal, I'm going to be starting with the lowest rated book and work up to my highest rated book. My lowest rated this month was a 3-star. So 3-star I read was Tough Luck Cowboy by A.J. Pine. This is the second book in the Crossroad Ranch series. I started off with the second book in the series, and I will admit, I do think it's smarter to start with the beginning of this series. Even though they can be read as standalone romances, the actual plot is interconnected, and I think I would have enjoyed it more if I had some of the backstory that occurred in book 1. We also see a lot of the couple from book 1, like they're very, very prominent in this book, and so I really did want to read book 1 because like I'm super hyped about them now, but this book it didn't go as well. So this is a cowboy romance, my first cowboy romance, and we follow Luke Everett and Lily Green. So Luke Everett is the middle brother. He is the one who is a womanizer. He does bull riding. He is very good with the horses. He's like always the nitty gritty, like hands-on kind of a guy. No one really takes him seriously, and that's kind of how he wants everyone to think of him. So years and years and years before this book started, Luke and his best friend went to a bar and they met these 2 girls, and Luke instantly had a connection with this one girl named Lily. But on that night, his best friend clearly was interested in her, and he was just like, you know what, whatever, it's fine, you can have her. And so his best friend went home with Lily, and then they got married. All these years he's been pining after Lily, he's secretly been in love with her. But when the book starts off, you find out that Lily has just signed the divorce papers from this best friend. They filed for divorce 6 months prior, and now it's like official, and Lily is completely distraught. She doesn't know what's going on with her life. She is a perfectionist. She is by the book. She has this massive planner. She does everything as it needs to be. She doesn't like things going out of control, and she is a chef. And so what happens is she meets this woman on the ranch who ends up mentioning that she is, you know, having a wedding and she's looking for someone to cater for it. And she's like, oh my God, I will do it. I will be your caterer. And then she finds out that that woman is the woman her ex-husband cheated on her with and is also having a baby with and is now marrying. And she's like, oh God, what have I done? But she is too proud to say like and back out, so she is going forward with it. And then we have Luke, who lives at Crossroads Ranch, which is, you know, near where Lily is and where the wedding will be held, so they cross paths a lot. And then Luke ends up getting really hurt bull riding, and so at one point Lily has to look after him because everyone's like, someone has to watch this man at all times or else he is going to go back out there and keep bull riding and he will probably die. So like, we need to get his shit together. And so it's about them falling in love and kind of having this connection that they've always had and never really understanding what's going on. I do think that like they like kissed and like made out and like were doing stuff very early on, considering that they had this like huge backstory, and I don't know, I just didn't really believe that aspect of it. I do think they were great for one another because they were the perfect complements. She is very by the book and he is just, you know, by the seat of his pants, and so they complement each other in that way. They're really cute together. I really did enjoy them. It's just the overall story itself, I was just struggling with like connecting. Phoenix Flame by Sarah Holland. This is the sequel to Havenfall, which came out last year. This just released. It is an urban fantasy duology. Deep into the mountains of Colorado, we have the inn at Havenfall, and this is the mortal way station between magical realms. Every year there is a summer summit, which is a conference where delegates from the different realms come and they make decisions and do trade, and it is all run by the innkeeper of Havenfall, who is always a mortal who, you know, runs it, and it's kind of like considered like, you know, the neutral land. And Maddie Morrow, our main character, is the niece of the current innkeeper. She has been studying her entire life to be his successor. She really wants to be the innkeeper. She has always felt more at home at Havenfall than she has, you know, out in the real world. However, when a magical coma is placed on her uncle and a dead body appears, Maddie has to step up to the plate and become a temporary innkeeper to find out what is happening and to save Havenfall from ruin. So it is an interesting series because it's set in our real world, but there are magical creatures. So it's like a contemporary urban fantasy in that sense. In this book, you do see a lot more of the actual other world. So it does have a bit more of a higher fantasy aspect to it. It is a good series. The biggest problem I had with this sequel was the fact that there is a love triangle that occurs throughout both books. And our main character, Maddie, she's bisexual, so she has a male and a female love interest in both these books, and the love triangle isn't resolved. Okay, I'm sorry, it's not resolved. Who does that in a book? Like, who doesn't resolve a whole plot point? It's a duology, there's not gonna be another book, and it's not even resolved. It's just like left open-ended. Like, that's so not cool. So not cool. And there are other plot points throughout the series that just aren't tied up. There are loose ends, and I don't understand why. This one is way more fast-paced. I got into it a lot more than I did with Havenfall. It's a really fun and quick duology. Like, you know, it's one that you can pick up on a day and finish within a day, but it's not something that like really stands out too much to me. Then we have Of Silver and Shadows by Jennifer Gruenke. This was a really fun read. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think it could have been a 5 stars if it wasn't for the fact that I kind of read it during a time when I was a little bit slumpy. It actually has a bit of a new adult feel to it. There are some quite like mature, sexy scenes that kind of had me being like, And there's also like a lot of swearing in this book. And so I was like, I don't know, like it's not something that I normally see in like my YA fantasy. So I was kind of like, I could see this jump up to new adult. So in this world, there is silver magic and it is passed down through bloodlines. And when the current king came into power, he went about and he eradicated every other silver wielder that was alive because he wanted silver magic to be something that only the royal family had, because he wanted to, you know, he wanted to be like, I have power, so you all have to listen to me and be this like huge honcho like thing. It was not good, which is why rebellions have been brewing. They've never actually succeeded, but when this takes place, we are following Ren, who is a common thief, but she is actually a silver wielder, which is very weird because there hasn't been a non-royal silver wielder for ages, and so she's keeping her magic very secret until she gets approached by the rebellion. The rebellion is run by this guy named Derek, not Derek, it's Derek, which was always a little bit weird to read about, but it's fine. He is the current head of the rebellion. I think he's like 25 years old. That's another thing why this is probably new adults, because all the characters are between like 19 and 25. But his current head, he enlists Ren, and the way that he gets her to join the rebellion is by being like, I will pay you a crap ton of money. Like, I will pay you so much money, like you'll be bleeding gold. And Ren is hella greedy, and she's like, oh, okay, I'll do it for the money. I'm not doing it for anything else, but I'll do it for the money. And that's her whole personality throughout this. So those are our first 2 POVs, Ren and Derek. And then we're also following Adley, and she is a member of the king's children. And so the king has like his own little personal guard, like a very special specific guard, which is made up of orphans or people who have been taken. And they are trained since they were like 5 years old to be like these very ruthless assassins and torturers and just like the worst of the worst. And so the king has just announced that whoever can find the rebellion leader, track him down and bring him to justice, they will get to become the king's fang. And this is the right-hand man, like the head assassin. This is a very prestigious position because it means that you will eventually have your freedom when you retire. Being a king's children means you never retire, you never have your freedom. And so Adley's like, I need this. Adley's also in a female-female relationship, which is secret, with another guardsman because they are not allowed to fall in love. And then the last POV we follow is Prince Callan, who I love. Prince Callan is the second prince. He's the young one. He's the one that no one takes seriously. He is very Nikolai-esque because when he leaves the palace, he has a secret identity of being the most notorious pit lord. He runs this pit, this fighting pit that is like the worst of the worst, but also the best in like the whole kingdom. And it is priceless. And so it's about how their 4 stories all kind of interconnect and how their paths weave together. And it was really smart. Like, this is a really smart book and I was really intrigued the entire time. It was very fast paced. It was hilarious. The banter in this is priceless. Just the snarky nature of Ren made everything so worthwhile. So I really would recommend this book if you're looking for a new fantasy read. It is a standalone as well, which is always really fun. I love finding solid standalones, really great. And like I said, the biggest part of this was how laugh out loud funny it was. Another 4-star read is A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. I'm not gonna grab it for my shelves. You know what A Court of Frost and Starlight is. it was 4 stars. Then, oh god, my last 4 out of 5 star was From Blood and Ash. I hope you've seen my fantasy romance vlog because I struggled so much deciding what I wanted to rate this book. It was killing me. I got a headache trying to figure out what I wanted to rate this. And I finally settled on 4 out of 5 stars. So we are following Poppy. She is the maiden. She is God's chosen. Everyone reveres her. And when she comes of age, she will be ascended, which means that she will go through a specific rite that will not only grant her immortality, but her ascension will also grant immortality to a lot of other people around her. And so she's lived her life in seclusion and she hates it because she's like, I never asked for this. I never asked to be secluded. I never asked to have no rights. Like, she is literally kept under lock and key. She has no actual friends, and her life it's one of privilege, but it's one of really shitty privilege because the man that she lives under is actually extremely physically abusive. And what happens is, after a series of events, Poppy ends up getting a new guardsman, and this is Hawk Flynn. Hawk Flynn is very revered. He's very young to be a guardsman, but he has built up a reputation of being a cold-blooded killing machine. And so it is their romance, which technically makes it like a bodyguard romance if you think about it. There's actually a lot more to this than just like, you know, Poppy's plotline and her romance in this. I would say the romance really isn't that prominent. I went into it thinking it was gonna be like a huge part of this book. It was there, but I actually, like, for me, that was the weakest part of this entire book, was the romance. I just didn't really feel them together. So, but that's a very unpopular opinion. I don't think I've seen anyone else really talk about the romance the same way that I have, and I feel kind of like, gives me anxiety to be like, I didn't love it. Like, please don't come for me. But I did love this world though, because it's very rooted in the paranormal. Jennifer Allen Trout is a paranormal fantasy, urban fantasy writer. Traditionally, this is her first high fantasy, and for a high fantasy, it actually feels a lot like a high paranormal fantasy because we have these people called the Atlanteans, and they are basically vampires. They were a race that was beaten down and kind of eradicated many, many years ago in like a great war. And out of that came this man named the Dark One, and he is considered like the rightful prince. And he has these followers called the Dissenters, and they create a lot of rebellions for like the Ascended, and the Dissenters are also the kind of people who are trying to kill Poppy. There are also these like werewolfy creatures called the Craven that are like a whole problem. So like, it's a very detailed world. There's a lot of lore in it, and a lot of it can be very, very confusing, and it can take you a little while to kind of get a grasp on it because Poppy is so uneducated on the actual world. You are also quite uneducated in how the world works until she learns about it herself, which is one of the problems always with first-person POVs, is that you only know as much as the character you are following. Oh, it was good. I did enjoy it. The banter in this was hilarious. There's a female friendship in this between Poppy and her friend companion Tawny. I loved that. It was like a priceless female friendship, and I adored the crap out of it. And there was a scene around like 2/3 of the way through the book that just like completely shocked me. I did not see it coming at all. It's very rare that they make me sit there and be like, oh my god, that really just happened. Oh shit. So yeah, I still need to buy the second book, but I am excited to continue on with it. Then we're moving on to my 4.5 stars. I do own this book, but it's at the bottom of my historical romance stack, and I cannot be bothered moving all the books just to get it out. So here we have Not the Duke's Darling by Elizabeth Hoyt. I loved this. It was my first Elizabeth Hoyt book, and I cannot wait to read more from her. However, I do want to say, as much as I did love this book, it is set in the 1700s, so witch hunts are still very much a thing. If that is something that you are sensitive to, do be aware of that going into this book. So we are following Freya de Moray, and she's part of a group of women known as the Wise Women, and they're hunted down by the witch hunters. But they're a group of women who seek out, you know, gaining freedom for women, getting women a right in the court, getting women to just have more privilege in the world. And she's currently working as a chaperone under an assumed name to kind of keep her identity hidden. She's keeping it hidden for many reasons. One, because she's a wise woman, and two, because her family is disgraced from an event that happened many, many years ago, which resulted in the death of a young girl. And so when the Duke of Harlow, who was part of the reason for that death and also the reason for her brother's imprisonment, comes into the picture at a country estate that she is at because she's a chaperone, she decides that she is finally going to enact her revenge upon him. And then we follow the Duke of Harlow, who is Christopher, and he has always regretted the day that happened in his childhood, which resulted in the imprisonment of his best friend, Freya's brother, and also the death of his best friend's younger sister. Just this death, this whole plot line is one that's going to take part throughout the entire Grey Court series. You only learn about it in this one, and then as each of the books comes out, we're going to go more and more into what really happened to this girl, how did she actually die, and where did everything result from? So Chris's plotline is the fact that he is actually being blackmailed at the moment, and in order to get the letters back that he's being blackmailed for, he has to go to this country party, give this man a bunch of money, and then get the letters back. And it's at this country party that he sees Freya again. He doesn't recognize her as the young girl from his childhood. He has no idea what's going on. He has no idea why this woman is being so rude to him and being just an absolute fiend and is just like awful. But he's intrigued by her because of that. So it's their romance. It's really interesting because she really does stand up for herself. She never wants to marry, and that's something that she completely stands by, and she stands by that throughout this entire book. She's like, that's not who I'm going to be. I have my own prerogative. I have these things that I have to do in my life before I ever settle down or do anything like that. And until I achieve those things, I'm sorry, but that's not something I can give you. And I really did admire that. She's also really badass. You hear her talking about how she trained and how she's really badass. But for once, you actually get to see her be badass. You know, she has some sword wielding in this, she fights, she's really kick-ass, and I just loved that. So this was a really, really great historical romance. It's great if you are into there being mysteries in your historical romances. Mysteries used to be a hallmark of historical romances, but in the past, like 10 years or so, they've definitely drifted out of play, but I'm someone who adores them. And I also want to say that we actually have a third POV in this book, which is it shocked the crap out of me. I was so confused. Because normally when you read a historical romance, you follow the hero and the heroine. But we also follow the wonderful Messalina. And Messalina is another one of the people who was involved in the whole murder that happened many, many years ago. And it was actually her younger sister that died. And so Messalina has a really important POV in this because she kind of ties all the storylines together, and she also has events that happen that end up leading into the next book, because the second book in the series is Messalina's book. So yeah, I really loved it. Then the second 4 out of 5 stars is A Trial of Sorceress by Elise Kova. This was my first Elise Kova book and I loved it. I did give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars only because the villain was so predictable. The villain in this was so predictable. It's not like the main villain, because this is going to be at least a 5-book series, but the villain for this specific first book, my God, I called it from like the second we met him. I was like, you acting like you're a good dude, but I have negative trust in you, bro. And I was correct. So let me get into this book. So A Trial of Sorceress takes place after the events of Era Awakens. The main character in this eventually becomes Empress, and she is the current Empress in this book, and she has like a daughter and everything. So like, I don't know how many years afterwards this takes place from this, but it's at least like gotta be a solid 20 years. But in this world, there's elemental magic. You have people who can control water, earth, fire, and air. We follow Ira, and she is a water runner, so she has water magic. What ends up happening is that the 5 kingdoms are finally coming together and, you know, creating a whole treaty. But in order for that to happen, there's going to be a tournament where the 3 best sorcerers of each of the 5 kingdoms will come together and have a tournament, and that's going to be the whole place where everything occurs. Ira really wants to participate and win because the kingdom that this tournament is going to take place in is one that she's always admired. It's one that she studied the history of and the lore of, and she's just obsessed with this kingdom. But the problem is that her uncle, her family, everyone around her, no one wants her to participate because 4 years ago, her emotions got out of control and she ended up killing someone with her magic. And ever since then, she's been kept under wraps. Her uncle really hasn't let her do much with her magic. She's just been very secluded. And so it's about her kind of deciding, you know what, no, I need to do this and I'm going to prove myself, and her participating in the tournament. There's a lot more to this. There's like a lot of cult politics. There's a lot of secrecy, bureaucracy. There's so much more to this world that you learn about. I do think it would have been a bit more helpful had I have read Era Awakens beforehand, because The only magic system that you really understand in this book is the water magic. I don't really have that much of a grasp on the 3 other magic systems, but I adored this. It was utterly addictive. I could not put it down. The plot was just going. I really wanted to uncover all the secrets that Ira was uncovering. There is a beautiful female friendship in this that I just wholeheartedly adored. Like, one of my favorite female friendships to date is in this. And there's also a slow burn romance that's going to take place over this series. You kind of get the inklings of it in this book, but this is 100% YA, just for anyone who was wondering. The author has come out and said that this book will primarily stay YA in terms of like sexy stuff, but she said that could change within like the 4th or 5th book, but as of now, that's just the way that she's keeping it. So just for anyone who is curious. Okay, and now we're gonna get to my 2 5-star books. The first one is A Court of Silver Flames. I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm thinking it's more of like a 4.75, but once again, if something's a 0.75, I'm just gonna round up because it's just stupid. So it's a 5-star read. I have an entire reading vlog dedicated to it. I also have an entire 20-minute chat with my dad talking about A Court of Silver Flames. That is also really fun and I highly recommend. So that's that book. And then the last 5 out of 5 stars is going to be Destiny's Embrace by Beverly Jenkins. Oh my god, did I fall in love with this book instantly. Oh my god, it was phenomenal. Phenomenal. My first Beverly Jenkins, and I will never go back. I need to like, it's a 3-book series and I bought the next 2 as soon as I finished the first one. So we are following Mariah Cooper and Logan Yates. So Mariah Cooper lives in Philadelphia. Her mum is awful. She is a seamstress and she works her daughter to the bone. Mariah has worked all her life under her mother's finger. Her mom is physically and mentally abusive. She forces her to labor away. She doesn't get to make any money from it. She's an amazing, amazing seamstress, but she has no rights. And so after one beating too many, she decides, that's it, I'm done, I'm leaving, I'm being taken advantage of, I have so much more worth than this. And so she ends up running off to her aunt's house, and her aunt ends up sending her to California because there is a job opening there at a ranch where she can be a housekeeper. And so she packs up, leaves her entire life behind in Philadelphia and heads to California. And then we have Logan Yates, who runs Destiny, which is the ranch in California. It is a very wealthy ranch. It is one that his mum, Alonza, kind of built back up after his father passed away. His mum is freaking amazing, but more on that in a second. Logan Yates is the eldest of the 3 Yates brothers. He is the one that currently runs the ranch. He is very well known. He's kind of a rake in a sense. Very mild, like very mildly rakish, but he has no want for a housekeeper. He does things his own way, but Alonza hires one anyway, and he meets Mariah, and she kicks him immediately after they meet, and he's just like, what is this woman? And she is just a complete and utter firecracker, and he is just so drawn to her, but he refuses to get married. He's like, I'm gonna be a bachelor forever, and she's like, well, I'm not gonna do anything because I am a proper lady, so if you ain't gonna give me what you want, then I'm not associating with you. So don't think that you can just have your way and I'll be some mistress. And it's amazing. This was also my first Western historical romance. I've never read a historical romance set in America and also out in the West, so we actually get a lot of history in this book, which I adored. I don't know too much about American history because I'm not American, if you couldn't tell. And so you really get to learn about what California was like when it was a Mexican-Spanish colony, the different racisms that were experienced during those times, how the gold rush affected California and all these different things. Like, you learn a lot about that. Alonza, who is Logan's mother, is Spanish. Logan's father was black, but Alonza is Spanish, so he is Spanish African-American. And it's just really interesting how you get to see all the history that occurs in this book, because Alonza has a huge role in this and in her explaining kind of her history. My favorite part of this whole book was Mariah. She is a absolutely phenomenal heroine. You know, she was so meek and submissive when she was living under her mum that she decided that when she got to California, she would no longer be like that she would take charge of her life, and that is what she did. She was so kick-ass, she was take no shit. You know, there is a scene where she just gets so fed up with something that's going on that she takes a bucket of water and she just dumps it on the people, and she's like, you guys need to like cool down and get your shit together because I'm not dealing with this and you're interrupting what I'm trying to do. And so get a grip on yourself. And I was like, this is amazing. She is amazing. And I've heard that a lot about Beverly Jenkins over the past 2 years. You know, I've been reading historical romances since 2019, and Beverly Jenkins is an author I've always heard people talk about because her heroines are always extremely kick-ass, extremely self-sufficient and positive, strong women, and I can 100% attest to that now. I will say the only issue I had with this book was they have a scene where he is touching her over her clothes, you know, in her downstairs area, and she just orgasms from it. Oh, so quickly, and I'm just like, that is so, like, maybe that's possible for some people. I didn't believe it. I sat there and I was like, how did she just, I was like, there's no way in hell that's possible. So the sex scenes and the sexual interactions, the orgasming in this book wasn't very believable, but everything else was. Anyway, that is gonna be it for my February wrap up. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button down below. If you want to see more of me, please go to my channel, and until next time, thanks a bunch everyone. Bye!